It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films on November 2nd, 2001. And we've got a lot of good movies to look at today. In fact, we're heading into a pretty packed 2001 holiday movie season. There's going to be a lot of notable movies that we'll take a look at over the next couple of weeks. Some that started off significant franchises, other ones that had significant places in their own history at this time of the year. But let's go ahead and start off with the first one that we have here, and that is Disney and Pixar's latest film, Monsters, Incorporated. So the story of Monsters, Incorporated follows two monsters employed at the titular Monsters, Incorporated. Top scarer James P. Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, played by John Goodman, and his one-eyed partner and best friend Mike Wazowski, played by Billy Crystal. Monsters Inc. employees generate the city's power by targeting and scaring children, but they are themselves afraid that children may contaminate them. When one child enters Monstropolis, pretty much all hell breaks loose. And for Pixar, this was kind of a big deal. I mean, they had three big hits before this. Toy Story, which became the massive hit that it was 6 years prior. Bugs Life, which was not as successful, but still a hit regardless. And then Toy Story 2, which had a very troubled production history. But in the end, it turned out to be a big hit for them. And this was kind of another test to see whether or not they could still hold it together, despite everything that happened with Toy Story 2. And the results of this movie paid off pretty well. This is still a very fun, very heartwarming animated movie. And the chemistry between John Goodman and Billy Crystal is very good in this. It's very top-notch. You can really buy into their friendship as Sully and Mike. And they're just great characters overall. The world they create here, it's pretty impressive for the time period. And even still holds up to this very day. I mean, they do a pretty good job of you can tell the animation is getting better as these movies keep going forward. Yeah, this was a movie that was really testing the boundaries of what Pixar could do as a studio. The animators and the technical people did a very good job of using special render software to make sure like fur and clothing look more realistic in this particular world in this movie. And they do a really good job of expanding the world that these characters can live in. I mean, Toy Story is pretty much straightforward when you think of the boundaries of the world that they could go into. Like in the first Toy Story, they'll go to a couple places that are outside of the home, but it's not as like grand and epic as it is in this type of movie. And even in Bugs Life, which it's on the small island, but the way they're able to like expand the world in there is very impressive in general when they're on there for most of the movie. This movie I felt like was the real test to see how far they could take it out, because not only do you have the city themselves, but when you get to see what the doors are all like, when all the doors are put into basically storage, and you see that world that they have to go through, it makes for a very fun, thrilling action climax at the end of the movie, and it's just a ton of fun. It's a very solid film, great animation, great comedy. It takes a little bit from some movies that from some shows that came before it. Of course, Our Real Monsters comes to mind in particular with this type of film, but they find a way to make something unique and very different with it, and for the most part, it generally does work very well. It's a very well-made film, a quality film overall. Not much more I can say about this one that hasn't already been said. Monsters Incorporated is a classic movie. Maybe not as much as the next movie, not as much, but it's still very notable for a number of different things. Let's talk about The One. So The One, it was sold as a movie that was basically a Matrix clone, and Chris Stuckman, I think, said it best when he talked about this movie. It's a cheesy ripoff of The Matrix, but a fun, cheesy ripoff of The Matrix, and he's kind of right on that. I've seen this movie before, but let me tell you about the plot of this movie. The film deals with the concept of multiverses and interdimensional travel, and it follows this rogue agent, played by Jet Li, who travels to parallel realities in order for him to kill other versions of himself to become a mystical super being known as the One. Lee plays a dual role. He actually plays 9 roles in this movie, so in a way, this is kind of a precursor to something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, where you have all the characters in that movie being played by the same actors. But Lee plays a dual role where he teams up with a deputy sheriff who teams up with a multiverse agent to prevent Yulaw, one of the characters he plays, from becoming the One. And it's definitely very much a cheesy ripoff of The Matrix, but it has kind of that unique charm to it that makes me feel like, okay, I gotta give you credit for this. I mean, this is a movie that's really, it's really insane. It's really over the top. I mean, the effects in the movie are very bad. And this is not a quality film overall. In fact, I actually remember wanting to see this movie in a theater, and when I was little, and I'm thinking maybe now that I've seen the movie, I'm kind of thinking to myself, maybe I'm glad I didn't go see this on a big screen because I don't know, I'd probably be let down by it. But then again, maybe not. I mean, it's weird how I mean, on a I mean, I was gonna say this is before digital cinema too, so this probably could have looked good without the. It's not a digital cinema, but I think once digital cinema came around, I think it really showed what you should do when it comes to like CG and all the CG and visual effects and all that, and how they're going to look on the screen. Because this was before that, and I think maybe I could have gotten used to it if I'd seen it in theaters. But I'm kind of glad I waited to check this one out because yeah, it's a cheesy movie, but it's a fun cheesy movie. It's a fun cheesy movie for the time period. I like that it doesn't take itself too seriously. Directed by James Wong, who gave us Final Destination. I think it's a fun movie. I enjoy it a lot. I mean, it's a ridiculous movie, but a fun, ridiculous movie too. So, I recommend it on that front. So, with that said, let us move on to our next film, and that is John Travolta and Vince Vaughn in the thriller Domestic Disturbance. So it's basically just a big budget version of The Stepfather, except Terry O'Quinn is not in it, and they replaced him with Vince Vaughn, and the guy that go up against Vince Vaughn. But in this movie, you have a woman played by Terry Polo who's getting married to a wealthy industrialist played by Vince Vaughn. Danny, her teenage son with ex-husband Frank, played by John Travolta, isn't happy about this. He stows away Rick's car one night, planning to go to Frank's house, but while there, he witnesses Rick murdering mysterious stranger Ray Coleman. Problem is, Rick's managed to dispose of most of the evidence, and he's considered a pillar of the community, and Danny has a history of lying. Frank believes him, though, and does see some investigating of his own as Rick Shady's past slowly catches up to him and his new family. And what's funny about this movie is that Vince Vaughn pretty much was an asshole in real life because he literally got arrested and charged for fighting in public with people outside of the making of the movie. And Steve Buscemi, one of the guys he was working on with the movie, was stabbed several times, and basically he had to go to court, and he entered a no contest plea, and the minor charges he had were dropped about 6 months later. So he was a monster in real life and in this movie, but yeah, the movie itself is pretty much what you think it is. If you saw The Stepfather, it's pretty much that movie. It's that film that's just kind of like, oh, this is like, I mean, honestly, this would be like a movie that would be seen as the made-for-TV movie of the week on CBS or NBC around this time period. I mean, this doesn't feel like a movie that needs to be seen on a big screen, except for the fact that, hey, we got Johnny Depp. Hey, we got Vince Vaughn. I mean, box office gold, I guess, but, I don't know. I don't think so, but, it wasn't even that big of a success. It only made $54 million back on a $75 million budget. So, yeah, it was not a financial success by any means necessary. I think people kind of knew early on what they were heading into when they saw this movie. It's just like, yeah, this ain't going to work for me. I mean, I've seen this done much better in many other films, and this film really does feel like something that's been done so much better in other movies. So, yeah, it didn't work in particular, so it's just kind of like, yeah. It was a bomb from the get-go, so, yeah. Not too many good things to say about Domestic Disturbance. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, the Coen Brothers' latest film, and that is The Man Who Wasn't There.
Rated R. Now playing in select theaters.
Yeah, before we jump into the review, can I take a look at that last scene again? R-rated for a scene of violence. So you're telling me if they took that scene of violence out, this would probably be rated PG-13, right? I mean, this was around the time when they were really putting the thing underneath the ratings in particular about what was in the movie and all that. But a scene of violence. So wouldn't that mean every PG-13 action movie at this point would have to be rated R because of that scene of violence? I mean, what makes this scene of violence so unique that it has to have that underneath it? I mean, I don't know. I just thought that was kind of amusing when I saw that. But The Man Who Wasn't There, this is a film set in 1949, and it tells the story of Ed Crane, played by Billy Bob Thornton, who is a withdrawn barber who leads an ordinary life in a small California town with his wife, who he suspects is having an affair with her boss. The Crane situation changes when a stranger comes into the barbershop and offers him an opportunity to join him as a partner in a promising new business in exchange for an investment of $10,000. Drawn to the idea, Crane plans to blackmail his wife's lover for the money. It's a movie that's basically set in black and white, employs a lot of voiceover narration, basically an homage to classic film noir. It has, like, classical music set to plot in a small town, features the protagonist from outside the criminal underworld. It's a movie that's very similar to what the Coen Brothers had done with the Hudsucker Proxy couple years ago, which I think is a much better movie overall. Not to say that this movie is bad per se, but it's a movie that definitely, that trailer pretty much tells you that this movie was not meant to be a film that was supposed to be widely marketed to people, because quite frankly, you couldn't tell what the movie is. If you were a member of the general public, you couldn't really tell what the movie was trying to sell you on in the long run. Like, what were they trying to sell you with that? I mean, like, hey, everybody loves this movie, you should go check it out. Okay, what's it about? We can't tell you that. It's just like, and to me, I think that's the worst thing about the movie in particular, is that the movie feels like it doesn't know how to sell itself. But at the same time, though, it's not a bad movie. It's a movie that has a lot of good things about it. A good cast: Billy Bob Thornton, Frances McDormand, Michael Badalucco, Richard Jenkins, Scarlett Johansson, Tony Shalhoub, James Gandolfini. Terrific cast, great cinematography once again by Roger Deakins. It's the Coen brothers doing what they do so well, but maybe a little too well. Maybe it's one of those ones where it does feel like a film that is for a very niche audience, and one that would not sell to everybody in particular. And I think that really hurts in the long run when it comes to the film's success in the box office, because it did not do so successfully at the box office, not too surprisingly, because of the fact that the marketing didn't really sell the film that well. But certainly not one of the worst things the Coen brothers have done. I mean, they've done much worse than this, but like I said, it's not even a bad movie. It's just underwhelming, especially when you consider that these guys were coming off 3 great movies in a row, with Fargo, and then The Big Lebowski, and then Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And then this was their next movie, and it's like, yeah, it's fine. It's definitely could have been a whole lot better, though, all things considered. So that's The Man Who Wasn't There. Now let's go ahead and move on to the last film we have here, and that is the romantic drama Amélie. So Amélie is really more of a French romantic comedy. I think I said it was a drama, but it's more of a comedy. And it follows a whimsical depiction of a contemporary Parisian life set in Montmartre. It tells the story of a shy, introverted, and quirky waitress played by Audrey Tautou, who decides to change the lives of those around her for the better while dealing with her own isolation. And it's one of those movies that really is one of those ones where you think it's going to be like a really lazy chick flick overall, or as Jay Sherman likes to say in The Critic, pretentious, snooty French films, but no, it's a surprisingly delightful and very charming romantic film. It makes you realize that, the director of Alien Resurrection is actually a lot better than that movie gave him credit for. I mean, Alien Resurrection was one of those ones where it's just like, what are you doing in this movie? I mean, like, who decided that this guy should be directing that? But here's a movie that makes you say, okay, this guy actually has some value to him. He's actually a good director. And he does show here. The visual look of the movie is incredible. Like, the visuals are really the strongest elements of the movie. Like, it's beautiful to look at. The cinematography is top-notch. The way the city looks is amazing. And Audrey Tautou, I think, gives a great performance overall to lift the spirit of the film overall. It's a very unique film on so many different levels. It's a film that very much is very compelling. It's very much a movie that keeps your attention throughout the course of its running time. It reminds me a lot of one of my favorite movies, Midnight in Paris. I mean, it's a movie that lets you see the beauty of Paris in a way that you've never experienced it before. This one does it more artistically, but I like Midnight in Paris a little bit better, even though it's more simplistic. But this is a movie that I really, really have grown to appreciate over the years. It's one I kind of steered away from it because, like I said, it looked like a cheesy rom-com, but it's a film that I'm really much surprised that I did not get to see the first time around, because, man, I really love this movie. I think it's a very good film that really deserves a lot more attention. Beautiful to look at, a very well-made film. Good storytelling overall, great cast overall. It's a great movie. It's one you probably have not seen, but please check out Amélie, man. It's definitely worth it. If you're looking for a good romantic comedy and a good French film, a really good French film, a modern-day French film, I should say, this is definitely one of those ones that you should definitely check out. Amélie's great. And so with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. The next time we meet, we'll only have 3 films to look at this time around. Jack Black and Gwyneth Paltrow in the Farrelly Brothers' new movie, Shallow Hal. We also have Gene Hackman in the movie Heist, and also Life is a House. So, 3 movies in general to look at. We'll take a look at those on the next episode. But until then, thank you so much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. Now, don't go too far away, because coming up next on Time About the Movies Flashback, we're flashing back to June 10th, 1988. We'll take a look at 3 notable films, including Bette Midler and Lily Tomlin in Big Business, Sean Connery and Mark Harmon in The Presidio, and Poltergeist 3. So we'll take a look at those three movies on Time About the Movies Flashback, which should be coming up right after this.